They said it was a peace summit. Bright lights, golden banners, Imperial diplomats dressed in shimmering white, dozens of alien delegates seated in harmony around a circular chamber that hovered above the clouds of Elisar Prime. It was the kind of place you expected to see handshakes, treaties, and hopeful speeches. But what happened that day would split the galaxy open like a cracked star. Colonel Adrian Voss walked into that room wearing no armor, no weapons, no war mask, just his old uniform, cleaned, pressed, and faded from too many battles. 1,000 scars stitched into every crease. His medals were left behind on Earth. He didn't need them. Everyone knew who he was. The war hero of the Orion collapse. The man who stopped the Drakari siege with 13 ships and a broken fleet AI. The Terran Ghost, as the Empire once called him. He bowed when he entered, offered respect, even smiled, and then they shot him. A high-frequency bolt, silent and sudden, cracked through the air and tore through his spine. He staggered forward, reaching toward the central table. Not in anger, but in disbelief. No one screamed. No alarms. No guards moved. Only one man stood with a smoking pistol. Imperial Minister Kaelix Thorne. Thorne didn't tremble. He didn't speak. He holstered the weapon and sat back down like nothing had happened. Adrian Voss bled out on a marble floor designed for diplomacy. He died not on a battlefield, but in a room meant for peace. And the universe held its breath. The footage went live within seconds. It wasn't supposed to, but someone in that chamber had the courage or the recklessness to upload the real-time feed to the neutral net. Within moments, trillions were watching. The shot, the fall, the cold indifference. Alien species from the Rim worlds gasped in horror. Human colony from Mars to Antares 3 went still. There were no speeches, no statements. The Empire's broadcast claimed the prevention of a Terran coup, but nobody bought it. Adrian Voss hadn't come with an army. He came alone. The message was clear. Earth, you are not untouchable. But the Empire forgot something. Something dangerous. Voss wasn't just a soldier. He was family, a mentor, a legend. Humanity didn't just mourn his death. It remembered. And Earth never forgets when you kill one of its own. In an orbital command center buried beneath the lunar crust, Admiral Sarah Voss, Adrian's sister, watched the unfiltered broadcast without blinking. No tears, no screams, just silence. Then she stood, not slowly, not thoughtfully. She stood like a storm rising. All fleets, she said into the command grid. Protocol Helix Black. Now. Her voice echoed to the nerve lines of every military hub in Terran space. No explanations. No debate. Just activation. 15 minutes. That's how long it took for every single human combat fleet to vanish off the interstellar grid. Gone. No transmissions. No signals. Entire battle groups slipped into deep cloak, hyperspace fold, or silent orbit. Civilian comms started going dark. Spaceports cleared. Navigation buoys flipped into lockdown. The stars themselves seemed to dim. The galaxy mistook it for panic. It wasn't. It was coordination. On the 13th minute, the Galactic Council tried contacting Earth. Their envoys were met with silence. No return calls. No diplomatic chatter. Only one brief ping broke through the void. We heard. And then nothing. The Empire laughed. They called it human cowardice. Claimed the mighty Terran fleets were running, hiding, disorganized. The Senate on Ilax 2 voted to move additional destroyers to the core border, just in case. But on the 15th minute, everything changed. Because while the Empire gloated, humanity was already behind them. Fleet Commander Jorix of the Imperial 7th was the first to notice. As his ship patrolled the trade lanes around Sector E99, 3 massive human dreadnoughts blinked into orbit above his position. Silent, unmoving. Before he could issue a warning, 5 more appeared near his homeworld. By the time he opened a channel, he received a system-wide alert. Unidentified Terran vessels detected in 118 locations. Immediate action required. Too late. In 15 coordinated minutes, Earth's navies had jumped, cloaked, and materialized above nearly every strategic Imperial site across the known galaxy. From military depots to relay hubs, research worlds to Imperial throne systems, they were there. No warnings, no demands, no mercy, just orbiting, watching. Across the stars, civilians stared upward into once blue skies and saw black, hulking shadows blotting out their suns. Not shooting, not moving, just present. The Terran War hymn played softly on old pirate channels. No one knew who triggered it, but it echoed like a ghost across space. Empires panic when ships appear. They go mad when ships say nothing. And Earth's silence said everything. Inside the Imperial Palace, the Emperor's voice cracked as he whispered to his council. How many ships did they send? His analysts returned numbers that didn't make sense. We think all of them. But that wasn't the real horror. Because when they reviewed hyperspace logs and jump records, they realized one truth. Earth never fired a shot. It just moved. And the galaxy would never be the same again. Silence. That's all the galaxy heard. Not a war cry. Not a threat. Not even a whisper from Earth. When Colonel Adrian Voss was executed, publicly, politically, and without honor, the galaxy flinched, waiting for humanity's rage to detonate across the stars. But Earth didn't scream. It went quiet. In the first minute after his death, the Solar Federation Senate was evacuated. By minute 2, military-grade comm relays across Mars, Luna, and Titan went dark, cut off from both civilian and diplomatic frequencies. At minute 4, 6 of Earth's deep space intelligence stations, many thought long decommissioned, lit up with silent pings. Their AI cores came online for the first time in over 50 years. By the 7th minute, the human homeworld's orbit looked abandoned, not because the ships weren't there, but because they no longer wanted to be seen. Earth didn't vanish by accident. It vanished by design. Terran War doctrine didn't operate on speeches. It operated on timers. And at minute 10, every planetary defense AI in the human core activated protocol Silent Choir, a strategy written not to defend, but to prepare an entire civilization for one synchronized strike. Shuttles left stations. Traffic rerouted. Civilian chatter dropped to zero. No panic. No alarms. Just eerie, methodical stillness. Human systems were too calm to be scared. Too precise to be mourning. They were waiting. The Empire's analysts couldn't explain it. This is a communications blackout, they said. They're disabling NAV relays. Maybe prevent internal uprising, they speculated. Idiots. Humanity wasn't retreating. It wasn't hiding. It was aiming. Minute 12. Aboard the Imperial battlecruiser Triumvir's Crown, high above the border world of Syrian Delta, Grand Marshal Redhex observed his holomap and laughed. Let them cry in their shadows, he said. Earth knows better than to challenge a galactic throne. His laughter stopped when a lieutenant screamed, Sir, multiple warp signatures, emerging within planetary orbit. He looked up. Dozens of Terran-class vessels, matte black and weapon silent, drifted into position, above the capital, above the population centers, above him. But they didn't fire. They didn't speak. They just hovered. Minute 13. The Imperial throne world, Azrael, one of the most heavily fortified worlds in the galaxy, blinked with static across every security monitor. Shield generators malfunctioned. Surveillance grids glitched. Defense satellites powered off. When technicians scrambled to restore visibility, the screens lit up, and every screen showed the same thing. A Terran dreadnought blocking out the sky, thousands of meters long, silent as a grave, the kind of ship built not to intimidate, but to end empires. Its hull bore no name, but its shape was unmistakable. The Black Concorde, the first and final warship designed under Adrian Voss's own command, a relic of a war humanity swore to bury. And now it was above them. Minute 14. Empire media still hadn't caught up. Anchors were reporting Voss's death like it was a political victory. Commentators speculated on Earth's weakness. Citizens partied in the streets of core worlds, celebrating the end of the Terran menace. But slowly, they began to look up. And when they saw the shadows blotting out their stars, hundreds of Terran cruisers above dozens of systems, celebration turned into silence. Children pointed to the sky. Parents locked their doors. Pilots turned back from spaceports. Because the message was finally clear. Earth hadn't gone silent out of fear. Earth had gone silent to load the gun. Minute 15. Every Imperial military station across 9 sectors reported the same impossible status update. Terran fleets detected in 117 locations. All appear to have jumped within synchronized window. No traceable trajectory. No origin point. No distress signals. No declaration of war. The panic didn't start with soldiers. It started with the nobility. Senators, warlords, and governors who once mocked Earth now screamed into private comms, demanding protection. And just before those signals were swallowed by a silent jamming field stretching across space, a single message came through. Simple, measured, cold. You took one of ours. Now look outside. The effect was immediate. The Empire tried rallying its fleet. Too late. They tried reaching allies. No answer. They tried hailing Earth. No signal. And as the realization set in that they were surrounded, watched, and completely outmaneuvered, one final wave of fear rolled through the galaxy. Not because of what Earth did, but because of what it didn't do. No threats. No bombs. No demands. Just unrelenting presence. The Galactic Council called it a show of intimidation. The news networks labeled it Terran retaliation. The people? They called it something else. The day the silence spoke louder than any war. Across the stars, every species, friend or foe, understood something vital about humanity that day. When Earth stops talking, you're already too late. The Empire expected an explosion. Instead, it got a mirror held high by humanity, polished with silence, and angled toward the galactic capital for all to see. And what that mirror reflected, their fear, their arrogance, their sudden, unmistakable realization that Earth had never been the one at risk. It was them. Across 112 worlds at the same time, the same nightmare played out. Orbiting cities once glittering with trade and joy now lived under the shadow of blackened Terran ships. No movement, no demands, just presence, enormous. Silent sentinels hung in the void like verdicts carved from steel, and it drove the Empire mad. On Zelen Prime, citizens ran screaming through the streets when the sky turned dark. The towering silhouette of the Terran dreadnought Severance hovered just above the clouds, so close it made buildings hum from the low-frequency grav wave it emitted. On the fortress world of Tharnaskor, the planetary governor triggered full lockdown protocols, mobilizing nearly 1 million troops. It didn't matter. Terran ships had already infiltrated their airspace, their orbit, their lives. And the most terrifying part? They hadn't fired a single shot. Inside the Galactic Senate on Azrael, the Emperor's voice cracked as he pounded his ceremonial staff into the floor. They have to want something, he shouted. No fleets around without purpose. But that's where he was wrong. Earth wasn't surrounding them to negotiate. It was surrounding them to prove a point. On the 16th minute, the true extent of the operation became clear. Imperial High Command attempted to compile a situational report. Locations, ship counts, possible tactics. But their system was overwhelmed with a new type of terror. Humanity wasn't just at their borders. They were in their core. Terran stealth cruisers had materialized inside inner orbit lanes, above shipyards, behind military moons, near vital trade planets, past the defenses, past the line no one was supposed to cross. Their scientists tried calculating the hyperspace trajectories required to pull off such a maneuver. The answer? Mathematically improbable. In other words, they shouldn't have been able to do this. But they had. Aboard the Imperial flagship Solarian's Crown, Admiral Velderan stood trembling in his war chair. His officers, once cold and calculated, now looked pale, hollow-eyed. "Status on the Terran fleet?" he asked, voice taut. His comms officer hesitated. "Which one, sir?" Duran blinked. "What do you mean, which one?" "They're everywhere, sir," she whispered. "They've layered us." Layered. It was the only word that fit. The Terrans weren't just in position. They were stacked. 12 human fleets positioned in multiple tactical tiers, Orbital, high opmo, deep system, and outer perimeter. It wasn't a military show. It was a chokehold applied with surgical calm. And then the final message came. Not from Earth, not from the Senate, but from a single ship, the Voss's Honor. Admiral Sarah Voss, sister to the murdered war hero, appeared on every screen in every system where a Terran vessel hovered. She stood in a plain uniform. No rank pins. No flashing lights. No medals. Just her voice. We did not come to conquer. We did not come to burn. But we will not let silence be mistaken for weakness. You murdered a man who walked in peace. So we came to remind you that the galaxy does not belong to thrones. It belongs to those willing to bleed for peace. And then she leaned forward. No threat, no anger, just clarity. You're surrounded, not because we had to, but because we could. The feed cut. That was all it took. No detonations, no invasions, just truth, spoken with the sharpness of a blade to the throat. Within hours, the political unraveling began. High lords from border systems severed ties with the Imperial core, declaring neutrality and requesting Terran protection. Trade ministers resigned en masse, fearing retaliation from Earth's economic branches. Whole planetary militias laid down arms, sending messages like, "We do not condone what happened on Ely Sar Prime. Please, we seek peace." And most shockingly, on the 18th hour, the Emperor's own cousin defected, boarding a Terran diplomatic cruiser and requesting asylum. But the most staggering collapse came from within. The people. Imperial citizens had long been fed tales of human inferiority. That Earth was a shadow of a dying species. That its strength was myth, its culture primitive. Yet now, those very people stood on balconies and rooftops, staring up at the ships they'd been taught to mock. And they saw no savages. They saw restraint. Because any other empire would have unleashed hell. But Earth just watched. And in the days that followed, a new term was born in whispered voices and panicked broadcasts across the empire. Not invasion. Not war. Not annihilation. They called it the encirclement, a moment where one species didn't strike, but simply showed up and held the entire galaxy hostage with the calm of a blade pressed just above the heart. The galactic balance had changed, not through weapons, not through war, but through precision, unity, and timing so perfect it became legend, because in 15 coordinated minutes, humanity proved that it could have taken everything, and chose to take nothing, except their pride. The Empire never imagined its death would come in silence. No bombardments, no armies storming the palace gates, no craters carved by plasma fire. Just the unbearable weight of being outclassed, outmaneuvered, and outwilled by the one species they had written off as sentimental relics of a lost war. But Earth hadn't just arrived to show strength. Earth had arrived to make them feel something they'd buried centuries ago. Guilt. The execution of Colonel Adrian Voss had been meant as a spectacle, an erasure of a Terran diplomat under the guise of justice. The Empire called it a lawful action, a minor footnote in the galactic political theater. But to Earth, it was an act of war against the soul of their people. Because Voss wasn't just a soldier. He was a symbol, a man who had once walked into the bloodiest neutral zone in known history and emerged with a ceasefire, a man who taught Terran military cadets that peace is not a surrender. It's the discipline to hold a sword without swinging it. So when the Empire killed him on live broadcast, mocking Earth's restraint, what they really did was put a bullet through every Terran child's dream of unity. And Earth responded the only way it knew how, with impossible coordination, with terrible grace, and with a warning the stars would never forget. In the days that followed the encirclement, the Galactic Empire didn't bleed from the outside. It imploded from within. On day 3, 47 Imperial governors submitted formal apologies to the Terran Assembly. They didn't just apologize for the assassination of Voss. They denounced their own emperor. Some tried to spin it as diplomacy, but everyone could see what it really was. Surrender camouflaged as formality. Not a single reply came from Earth. The Terran fleet remained unmoving, engines cold, weapons silent. They weren't here to speak. They were here to watch. to witness the unraveling of the very empire that once claimed dominion over 8 spiral arms. On day 5, fear turned into confession. From the shadows of imperial bureaucracy, files began to leak. Stolen memos, classified orders, videos never meant to be seen. The one that broke the galaxy? A recording of Voss's final moments. He was offered a deal. Kneel, denounce Earth, call humanity primitive, say they were unworthy of the stars. He refused, even as they locked him to the public execution dais, even as the crowd jeered and the cameras rolled. His final words? You think this podium makes you gods, but Earth knows what gods bleed like, and so will you. Then they silence him, or so they thought, because that video went viral across 412 systems in less than a single solar hour. And suddenly, the Empire wasn't just surrounded by Terran warships. It was haunted by the ghost of a human who never even raised his voice. The rebellion didn't come with blasters. It came with flags lowered, walls painted with his name, children chanting lines of his peace doctrine in plazas. Planets that once feared Terran military now invited them, because Voss wasn't just a Terran. He was what the galaxy wished its leaders were. And Earth? Earth wasn't just here for justice. It was here to remind them what they'd lost the moment they started believing conquest was culture. By day 7, the Imperial Palace was quiet. The throne room, once filled with arrogant admirals, now echoed with footsteps of servants scrubbing Voss's name off the walls, hoping, stupidly, to erase guilt with paint. The Emperor himself hadn't spoken in days. His own security no longer looked him in the eye, because the truth was crushing. The man they executed now ruled their people more than he ever ruled Earth. Then, on day 10, Terra High Command sent one message. Just one, not through encrypted channels, not to the Emperor, but broadcast an open frequency to the entire galaxy. We came when you killed one of us. We stayed to see if you'd learn. We leave now, not because we forgive, but because vengeance is easy. And Earth no longer does what's easy. And just like that, the Terran fleet vanished. Folded space. Gone in seconds. No victory speech. No trophy. No occupation. Just absence. And in that absence, the Empire felt something it hadn't in centuries. Shame. Across the galaxy, power shifted overnight. Neutral systems began adapting Terran diplomatic protocols. Young leaders cited Voss's writings as foundational doctrine. Peace treaties that had collected dust for decades were suddenly signed. And the once mighty empire, it became a whisper, a reminder of what happens when arrogance mistakes compassion for weakness, of what happens when you kill a man who walked through galaxies unarmed, of what happens when you force humanity to pick up the sword, not in wrath, but in memory. Because Earth never needed to destroy the Empire. All it had to do was let the galaxy see the truth. And once it did, the Empire fell all on its own. It began with one man in chains. No armor, no army, just a Terran war hero, unarmed, standing on a cold slab of metal beneath a burning alien sky. They thought killing him would make humanity flinch. Instead, they made him eternal. 15 minutes after Colonel Adrian Voss was executed, the galaxy changed. Not because Earth fired a shot, but because Earth showed up in every orbit, every sky, every breath of space the Empire thought it owned. And then, humanity did nothing. Nothing except stare. And sometimes, silence is louder than fire. But what happened next? That's where legends are forged. Because this wasn't just a military operation. This was something deeper, something older than empires, older than politics, older even than war. This was a reckoning, a reminder that peace isn't a weakness, that sometimes it's the quiet man who walks without a gun who becomes a sword the universe never forgets. In the years that followed the encirclement, as historians called it, children across hundreds of systems were taught a new name for diplomacy, the Voss Doctrine. It didn't come from a treaty. It came from a moment, a single, defiant heartbeat, when one man chose to speak peace while staring down a firing squad. His words became scripture. His silence became thunder. And the message he died for? You can't threaten what refuses to fear. The Empire never recovered. Oh, sure, it still had ships, still had worlds under its banner, but they no longer marched with pride. They marched with memory. Because every time they tried to rally their people, they remembered what Earth had done, surrounded them without firing, held the knife without twisting, showed the galaxy what true power looks like. Control, not carnage. Admiral Sarah Voss, Adrian's sister, never spoke publicly again. After a final broadcast, she returned to the shadows of Terran space, declining interviews, medals, and political posts. But statues rose in her absence, not of her, of him, on once hostile planets. They built monuments to the man the Empire murdered, not because Earth demanded it, but because the galaxy chose to remember. And every monument bore the same inscription, carved in dozens of languages. He walked unarmed through a galaxy of blades, and made them sheath themselves. And Earth? Earth changed too. Gone was the quiet giant hiding behind peace accords and trade routes. What remained was something new, something terrifyingly measured. Because now, everyone knew what Earth could do. They had seen it, they had felt it, and the terrifying part? Earth hadn't even used half its strength. The encirclement became required reading in military academies, not as strategy, but as restraint training. Know when not to fire, the general said. Know when fear speaks louder than fury. And so, humanity became a paradox. Feared, respected, invited, because everyone knew. If Earth shows up, something has gone very wrong. 50 years later, a small moon in a neutral zone was renamed. Not for a battle, not for a treaty, for a man, Voss's reach. There, beneath two suns and quiet sky, an annual gathering takes place. Peacekeepers, diplomats, former enemies. No weapons, no politics, just stories. Stories of the time humanity reminded the stars that even the most powerful empires kneel before honor. And as children run to the fields, they play a game called the 15th minute. One child stands tall, eyes closed, hand behind his back. The rest circle them, in silence, waiting. And when the child opens their eyes, they whisper one phrase, "You shouldn't have touched our own." And the game ends, because that's what this story was, in the end. Not a war, not a siege, but a line crossed, a price paid, and a galaxy changed. Forever. He died alone, but he made them all stand together. And now, when the stars look back, they don't remember the emperor who ordered the execution. They don't remember the crowd who cheered. They remember the Terran who never bowed, and the world that rose behind him in silence. Because some men are mourned in cemeteries, others are remembered in the fear of empires.